For the fall season grand finale, if you will, Hallmark Channel aired Haunted Wedding. It involves modern-day wedding planning, historical romance, ghosts, flashbacks, comedy. Yeah, they really packed a lot into this one. If I can summarize this, it's about the adventures of a pair of ghost hunters who fell in love and are planning their own wedding at an old haunted inn. But the ghost who also resides at this inn doesn't want anyone to get married here because, well, she never got to live out her happily ever after. So if she couldn't, she's determined to make sure no one else will either. So how will our ghost hunters be able to pull off the perfect wedding of their own? Well, like I said, there's a lot to unpack with this one, so let's dive right in and talk about it. Hi, I'm Stephanie, and this is the Magical Movie Club, a place to come and chat about everything Hallmark movies. This past week, we watched Haunted Wedding, starring Janelle Parrish and Dominic Sherwood. I have to be honest, this is the first time I've seen either of these two, and Hallmark hasn't really ventured much into the Halloween theme, but I like Halloween, just maybe not so much the gory side, so I was looking forward to seeing this one. The movie opens with our ghost hunters, Brian and Jana, on the scene at a haunted mansion with their team and all their thermal imaging equipment.
Electromagnetic fields are within normal parameters too.
On a mission to find a real ghost. Of course, it's at night, and Brian knocks over a pan for some spooky sound effects.
Oh, that's a pan.
They do a decent job of creating a familiar scene that we've seen before on some popular ghost hunting TV shows. What Jana doesn't know is this is really all leading up to an elaborate proposal.
So I figured there's no better place to do this than an abandoned sanitarium for the criminally insane.
They didn't find any ghosts here, but as Jana said, they'll have the rest of their lives to keep searching.
And maybe one day we'll find proof that ghosts really exist.
Clearly, this day would come much sooner than they ever expected, and in a big way. Fast forward to 6 months later, and they're all set to go away to their wedding destination, which is about 4 hours away, with ghost detection gear.
A wedding at a haunted manor. Have I told you how crazy that is?
Not my idea of a beautiful wedding, but to each his own, right? Actually, what's also significant about this scene is we meet her best friend and maid of honor, Rachel, and also they point out that Jana's driving up 2 days ahead of Brian. That'll be significant in a bit.
Okay, well, I'll see you in 2 days. I love you.
So Jana and Rachel arrive just in time to see a guest storming out of the inn, outraged and promising never to return.
No, I'm not staying in this bloody tomb. One more minute. Sir! Excuse me!
And inside, when they're checking in, there's a bit of foreshadowing when the owner says she wants Jana to have the wedding of her dreams, when we hear the crash of thunder and a door blows wide open. Coincidence? Or perhaps this is just the beginning.
Did you feel that?
Yes.
Now let's take a look at the scene where the owner is showing them their room. Is it just me, or is Marion, the owner, overly jumpy and skittish?
No, I'm across the hall.
It looks as though she's trying to hide the fact that this place is haunted, which makes no sense to me because Jana and Brian specifically chose this place because it's known for being haunted.
It was featured in Spooky Haunts of America 5th edition, and it was rated 3 tombstones.
Later that evening, when Rachel and Jana were talking, we find out Jana was once engaged before. And while we don't quite learn all of the details here, it turns out that her ex-fiancé left her on their wedding day. That's going to come up quite a lot.
He was pulling away, and I ignored all the red flags.
Speaking of coming up, in case you're wondering if we ever do see any ghosts, of course we do. As a matter of fact, as the viewer, we get to see a little sneak peek of her when the two best friends go downstairs for some tea.
Am I all right?
The next morning, Jana and the owner chat for a bit on the front porch, where Jana hears the story of Angelique de Mornay. She fell in love against her father's wishes with a young man who was killed during the Revolutionary War.
Well, those redcoats killed the love of her life, so no.
But then even Jana surprises the ghost.
No, I didn't say anything. She can hear me.
So what does any good ghost hunter do with all this new information? She goes snooping, of course.
It's not like we're gonna walk in on her in the shower.
And this is where it gets a little weird. Jana's inside the old bedroom of Angelique de Mornay and comes across a portrait of her fiancé. So, do I mean Jana's or Angelique's fiancé?
Wow, he looks just like Brian.
The spitting image.
Yes. Now, so far, other than the owner acting so nervous all the time herself, nothing too crazy has happened yet, but that starts changing when Brian arrives the next day.
You look like you've had a long journey.
When Jana catches him up on everything and shows him the portrait, the two of them get all excited. Not about their own wedding, mind you. They get geeked up on all the paranormal activity.
I think we should bring out the big guns.
The thermal radiation gauge detector. Yes, baby.
As it turns out, they don't actually need any equipment at all because both Jana and Brian can see Angelique just fine on their own.
Brian?
I honestly can't believe it. It's
Brian.
Is it a ghost?
And this is where the weird starts creeping in. Angelique mistakes Brian for her fiancé Malcolm.
My darling, my betrothed, you have returned.
And when they tell her who they are and that they're getting married here, Angelique turns angry and declares that if she couldn't marry here, no one will.
No one is to wed in my home ever but me to my Malcolm.
So was that a little overdramatic? Yeah, this is only the beginning. This is also where we're coming to the premise of the rest of the movie.
Stuck in this house for more than 200 years in her wedding dress.
Since Angelique is going to do everything in her power, and as a ghost she does seem to have powers to stop the wedding.
What the?
Whoa.
Brian and Jana spend all their time here trying to reunite Angelique and Malcolm so that she can move on happily ever after and let Brian and Jana have their own wedding of their dreams here at the manor. Piece of cake, right?
Oh, you know who we need to call?
Ghostbusters.
No, better. Earl Dewberry. Yes!
Well, this is where it goes a little off the rails for me. This Earl character is a bit eccentric, to say the least.
Yes, Angelique, tell us your story. Show me what I need to see.
And Brian and Jana spend more time focusing on the ghosts than their own wedding. Like here, they forget about the food tasting.
It's today.
Oh, we forgot about that. Could you guys handle this too?
But maybe it doesn't really matter because Angelique keeps interfering anyway.
I thought I made myself clear.
Okay, this is getting ridiculous.
So the caterer storms out next and the wedding is 2 days away. If they want their own wedding to come off without a hitch, or is it with a hitch? They need to work quickly.
I suggest you two hurry.
Let me stop here for just a moment. At this point, we were almost 30 minutes into the movie, and aside from the scene with Earl in it, it wasn't too bad. I personally liked some of the flashback scenes.
I am merely here to see if you need help, as you are not fully healed.
Of course.
I don't know if I just love period costumes or the history, and the research they did, like going to the Historical Society.
Angelique de Mornay and Malcolm Buchanan are part of the local lore.
I have to admit, it was all fascinating to me. But then when we were back to the present day, we'd see something like this.
No, please, no touching the artifacts, please.
I'm not much of a fan of campy comedy like this, and most of the men in the movie, like Earl, the guest who stormed out when they first arrived, the caterer a little bit.
Hello, hello. Who's ready for an explosion of flavor? Right over here.
And now Brian, they all had their moments where they poured it on just a little too much for me. And maybe you felt completely different, but that's just my perspective. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is I was having a hard time figuring out what direction the director was trying to go here. Which is interesting because Jeff Beasley has directed some other Hallmark movies that I just loved, like Love Strikes Twice. And, well, I'll tell you about the other one of my favorites a little later. Our couple, Brian and Jana, do finally meet Malcolm. It turns out he died at a location where there is now a pub, and he's in exactly the same predicament as Angelique. So how exactly do Brian and Jana get them to reunite? Well, that's what they try to figure out for themselves for the next hour. And wow, nothing ever seemed to go right for them, and Angelique got angrier and angrier.
Bring him to me. You will not like what happens to your wedding if you do not.
Unfortunately for me, the next hour was not quite as good as the first. It was really slow and frustrating. And then, oh my gosh, they brought Earl back, complete with,
So, stay within your lane.
and yes, he actually got them chanting,
Trap in order to free. Louder! Trap in order to free.
His idea wasn't all bad. They needed to help Malcolm, the ghost stuck in the tavern, to somehow come over to the manor and reunite with Angelique. And Earl suggested that they could transport him in this little miniature house. But yeah, the theatrics were getting to be a bit much. Take this next scene, for example.
You lie! You have not seen Malcolm. It is trickery so that you may wed.
Overact much? Not to mention the wind and just everything was getting to be too much.
It's too much.
What with everything happening that could possibly go wrong and Angelique's drama building,
There will be no wedding.
I was looking at the clock wondering when it would finally be over.
And it's starting to seem like you care more about Angelique and Malcolm than you do about you and me.
Well, by the time they finally got to the end, it was kind of cute.
I vow to have the patience that love demands.
Angelique and Malcolm were finally saying their own vows at the same time that Brian and Jana.
I promise to put my trust in you, now and forever.
So how do I rate it? Honestly, I think this was a solid 3 for me. There were some parts I enjoyed. I love a good mystery and some detective work, and the flashback scenes were delightful.
Until we meet again.
But I've been on the fence all week trying to decide whether I enjoyed Angelique and Malcolm's love story more than Jana and Brian's. Which brings me to my point that there were probably just as many scenes that I didn't care for, like, well, every scene with Earl in it. And that second hour seems to drag on for so long. And Jana couldn't stop dwelling on her own past.
I mean, I know that feeling of being robbed of what you thought your life would be.
She brought it up like 6, 7, maybe 8 times. Seriously. I'm sure what I'm about to say is going to be controversial, but I wanted to tell her it's time to let it go.
On the day of our wedding, he sent me a text saying he wasn't ready for marriage.
You're about to marry the right person, so live in this moment and embrace what you have now. I'm honestly not trying to be insensitive. I think clearly I was ready to move on. And after giving this some thought, it's because the first half of the movie, which for the most part I enjoyed, set up an expectation in my mind of a good mystery movie and a powerful love story, but then it took a weird turn and became too campy.
Thank you. We will guard them with our lives. Oh, my.
It felt like each half was directed by someone different and it was then pieced together. And it didn't fit right, which would explain why I kept looking at the clock. I'm really curious to find out what you thought of this one, though. I've seen a few polar opposite ratings out there. I think the first one I read was a 1 and the next one was a 10. So which one are you? Or are you somewhere in the middle like me? Well, on that note, we're finally wrapping up the fall and Halloween season, which means next week is officially Christmas season for both Hallmark and Great American Family. Hallmark will be airing 3 new movies. 'Twas the Date Before Christmas, Holiday Crashers, and Scouting for Christmas. And that's not counting This Time Each Year, which is part of their Miracles of Christmas airing on Hallmark Mystery. And GAF will be showing A Vintage Christmas with Christopher Russell and Merritt Patterson. I may have to pick and choose which ones to talk about, just because there are so many new ones coming out this year. We'll figure this out. Until then, and as always, thank you so much for being a part of the Magical Movie Club. If you like this too and want to see more, please let me know by hitting the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're interested, I have links to the preview video as well as the movie page for more details about Haunted Wedding in the description below. I'll be back next week to chat more about our favorite Christmas movies.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not sensing his presence. I'm standing right here.